Almost.
This happened in council,
This was the work session.
the work session.
November was like this.
You remember the fix?
We just had the recording and went with it, so.
One of the cameras on, it's not the normal one we use, but I guess we'll get a job done.
Go with that. Okay, well, apologize for a little bit of technical delay, so we'll call it 6:34, call the November 15th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Go ahead with the roll call, Paul.
Mr. Harriman?
Here.
Mr. Swain?
Here.
Mayor Carney?
Here.
Mr. Adler? Mr. Gaspar?
Here.
All right, approval of minutes from our meeting on October 18th. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Second?
Mr. Harriman?
Yes.
Mr. Swain?
Yes.
Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Gaspar?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to communications. Planning and Zoning, Mr. Hutchinson.
Yep, welcome everyone tonight. I'm going to start with kind of what I did before, but wanted to shout out to Tyler Harriman. Congratulations on making council. He finally got you off his board. So, in front of you, I passed out Darby Station Phase 3. We did a administrative revision. Nothing changed as far as counts or layouts, but you'll see there's an original plat there according for section 2, and then on the following 2 pages are examples. What they did was they added a street stub off of that street there, so where it was just a one-way stop, it's now a 4-way stop with a stub going to the property to the north now. So that's just a copy to be updated on that.
So with that, you said that the counts didn't change, but it looks like there's like maybe 2 fewer lots right there. Did they get added somewhere else?
They just shifted them around onto, they're actually shifted on, is it Wagon Road? It's,
Okay. Slippery Rail Drive,
Slate Wagon, I'm sorry.
Slate Wagon.
Yeah, they ended up just shifting them over there. So nothing, like I said, there was no number count. Nothing was changed other than just that one stub. And they extended the street stuff and the utilities to the end of that as well. Also, we had Fisher Homes presented to council on Monday night. They presented the same exact presentation that they gave this board a month ago. They decided not to make any revisions for the council presentation, just they didn't want to confuse it because you guys seen one, they didn't want to bring a new updated one, so they just did the original presentation to them, and they'll come back in front of us with a revised site plan. But they did get many comments from council, other than just echoing comments that this board made, so they have been studying our new PUD section, so they're making sure everything lines up with the new code. Also, we met with, 2 weeks ago, we met with the developers and engineers with the spot. That's kind of been off the radar since we've seen them. They are beginning engineering and getting stuff going, so they can get ready for final development plan and hopefully get that project moving soon. I wanted to give everyone a development update, kind of just overall big picture. Right now, either under construction, approved in planning, or in the development planning phase, or in annexation, or in discussion, we have just under 5,000 residential units right now in discussion. That's in one of those phases, so it's coming. We have 7 annexations right now in discussion. Not all of those are tied to a development. We do have some property owners that do abut Plain City that wish just to annex their properties into the city at this time. So there's nothing tied to them yet. But we do have 7 of those. We are officially, I can't remember if I gave this update last month or not, we are officially out of the water and sewer business. Mid-Ohio has taken over, so they are in charge of all water and sewer infrastructure, plants, building, all that stuff. We're still doing the billing here for them until the end of the year, but they'll be taking over everything at the first of the year. So moving forward, any development that needs utilities will have to go in front of that board for discussion and for review as well. So they'll kind of have an extra step to the process, but that's what will have to happen to get utilities. So that is underway. I am working on the sign code. We kind of got shuffled to the back. I was hoping to have it in by now, but we had some other stuff that you'll see on tonight's agenda that kind of got in the way. December, right now, we don't have any application. We passed the deadline. So depending on how our conversations go with the code changes tonight, we may not necessarily need to have one in December. But if there's, if something should come up, if something should change with one of these amendments, code amendments tonight, or if council should choose to change something in one of these amendments, we may put that on the agenda, but it would probably be the only thing on the agenda for December. So right now, we plan for it, but we might not have December meeting. And that is all I got.
So kind of a question for you with sort of Mid-Ohio taking over the water. What's kind of the process then for developments as they come in? Like, typically it's kind of always been through here. Would they go through like Mid-Ohio to find out about the water and sewer, then come here, then there? Is it sort of interchangeable?
It's going to be a group effort. With annexation, to be able to annex the property in, we have to be able to provide services. Therefore, we're going to have to have Mid-Ohio's approval before we can even annex the property in. So it'll be like now how we pull in members, different department members, engineers, fire and police. We'll just be adding the Mid-Ohio Water Board to that initial meeting. So they'll be at the table at the beginning just to get that rolling.
Okay. And then, my thought kind of December, if it's light, is, if there's something that, you're seeing that we can probably take care of, that way, it doesn't get compounded onto a meeting later on when there's a lot of stuff. So if there's anything, that would make your life easier, I'd be open to doing that for you.
So this month, this might be your last meeting.
It might be.
Didn't bring a cake or anything? Maybe we'll just meet maybe we'll meet in December.
We'll just have cake in December. Okay. Okay, thank you. BZA, Ms. Jaskowitz, you guys have a meeting? I know you have one upcoming, I believe, but,
Right, we haven't had any meetings since, but we do have a meeting next week.
okay. And with that, then over to Council, Mayor Carney.
Yes, so from our last meeting on October 18th, that following weekend, the village hosted the annual Fall Fest, and we had record number of people attending, so there was around 4,000 people that they kind of gathered, plus, depending, that was just more of adults, and they used cell phone data on that to gauge the number of people attending, so that was a great turnout. We just recently hosted our Veterans Day ceremony last Friday in conjunction with Jonathan Oliver Local Schools, and that was a great community networking event. Been meeting with staff members and our state representatives to talk about the upcoming capital budget and our project that we want to be able to propose for that. And Monday I attended the Amazon Web Services Think Big Space grand opening at Canaan Middle School for Jonathan Oliver Local School District. There are 40 Think Big Spaces in the United States, and 20 of those are in Ohio, and Jonathan Oliver has 2, which I think is a great number when you look at the grand scheme of them and the commitment that they are giving to our students. So I know everybody complains, Amazon is not a local supporting small business, but they do support our community. So I do want to just make that statement and thank them for giving back to our students. We have Christmas, I'll start back, December 2nd, we have Route 42 Holiday Hop from 9 to noon, which takes into consideration all of the Route 42 businesses. There's different stops, and I know Santa will be at Ace Hardware that morning, and many other businesses will be open. And then later on, from 4 to 7 p.m., we're going to have our annual Christmas Under the Clock, which will take place, again, 4 to 7 p.m. uptown with a tree lighting ceremony starting at 5 p.m. And then Miami Valley Scene Threshers are doing tractor rides out to the park. The park is going to be lighted with, I think new this year, it's to music. So it'll be coordinated to music, yes. And I know our public works are working really hard to get everything done for that, and our uptown is getting decorated, so they've been busy, and all the staff members have been putting in many hours, and we really appreciate it. Also, we are filing our application for Tree City USA status, so that is in, and I believe they look over and go over the applications in December. So Mr. Kitts with Parks and Rec has been working really hard to make sure that we can achieve Tree City USA status. So that is everything. Oh, and we have 2 new council members, so congratulations, Mr. Harriman. Mr. Aaron Lewis is the other new member of council, and then we have Mr. James Sense, who will be returning to council. So very excited for the new year. January 3rd, we will have our swearing in. So it is, again, open to the public and just ready to hit the ground running.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be excited to come on board to council, so it'll be fun to join that side. And then just thank you to Mr. Rucker, Mr. Reed for their service the last, 4 years and 8 years?
Mr. Rucker has
Ms.
served
Rucker?
8 years on council and then chose not to rerun. So
Yeah.
that was, yes, we will be very sorry to lose him on council.
All right, next item, public comment. Is there anybody here to speak for anything that's not dealing with the public hearing items? No? Okay. Old business, nothing's in that one, so moving on to new business. First item on our agenda is CP 23-2, the conceptual plan for the Alcott Drive mixed-use development. So, want to come up or pull it up?
passed out, all you remember, I had the site plan.
Got the
printed out.
middle one. Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. David Blair with Shremshock Architects, again, here representing Vectors, the development of the site. We have been here before on this site, returning essentially with kind of modifications from what we heard last meeting a couple months ago. So I'm really kind of focus and direct to those. Primarily, the primary development of 20 units in the 3-story building is the same as it was before. There's a corner element that drops around Alcott and 42. It is 10 feet off the property line to allow for the 10-foot kind of, I'll say, bike path right of way that runs along 42. That element stays the same. Essentially, the orientation to Alcott stays the same, very similar. When we came in last time, we were literally in the middle, in the meeting of changing the zoning for this from, forget it was a commercial 4 to planned commercial development. So we did a little bit of reconfiguring slightly based upon some of those elements. They weren't too critical, dealt slightly with setback differences from the ingress-egress drive on Alcott. Really probably the biggest, and a few other minor elements that really probably aren't critical on this, but that did adjust just slightly to align with what the PUD's requirements were for that offset. I'm going to kind of run through the critical elements we heard at the meeting for alterations to the project. There was, on the Alcott side to the east, a drive-through previously shown. We have eliminated that as an option. So we're not going to do a drive-through restaurant there. We still have square footage to that side, and we'll look at, I'm not sure if you guys have an elevation thing, but I do have a board that will show it if you don't. So what we've done is we had the 3-story development. That really stayed the same. We adjusted heights by about 2 feet down to get it as low as we really can do it with a good-looking building and not squeeze things too much. But what we've done is show a single-story element where the restaurant portion or the drive-through was. Before that drive-through, there was units over top of that restaurant portion. It was a drive-through really in that area. So we've bumped the building out to the east some degree, but we've made it a single story because part of what we talked about was a transition between the 3-story over towards 42 and as it turns the corner, and then down to a single story, and then it really goes down to the entry, and then it kind of goes back up to the 2-story houses that exist then in the development. Do you have an AO6 sheet? There. So that was a section along Alcott that kind of shows how the transition occurs from the 3-story maximum 40-foot height to the peak of the roofs down to the single story. So we start to lower the development down. The entry features in just outlined are the plans or the trees that exist along Alcott and the size of those. Show new plantings, mounding and planting to the east side in the transition between the lots, the residential lots, and their property line to the parking and the ingress at the building. And you can see that the existing 2-story home it's not too much different when you get to the peak of the roof versus the 3. So I think we've kind of tried to address that that scale transition in what we did, and then obviously eliminating the traffic, particularly that would occur probably during busy times in morning and evenings and rush hour areas around the drive-through. So that's critical element there. Obviously, landscaping to the east side of the single story. Again, we're featuring that as a restaurant element. Doesn't mean it would be, but it's the most likely and the heaviest use, so that's what we're kind of addressing that as potentially being. The parking layout, if you go back to the site plan then, is almost exactly what we had shown before, coming in. Rather than having a loop to a drive-through, that's where the restaurant or that single-story element occurs, and landscaping there, so that barrier. But really, it's then turning to the west, being able to loop around around the north and around to that island, and then there is still refuse kind of in the corner of the lot there. So there's dumpster enclosure at that location, so they can be accessed. Screening around that dumpster location. We do kind of anticipate any loading would really occur, not in a specific loading spot, but as you would turn that corner, you're not going to do it with a semi, but with a smaller box type truck or delivery truck or something, kind of toward the northwest corner of that site where you kind of would have the parallel parking piece. There's the ability there to pull over temporarily and identify that kind of as a loading element. So that's kind of where we think that would occur without specific location. We did also then want to address the parking and the concerns with lights and noises, et cetera, particularly light, really, pollution to the residents and the residential development where there's a number of houses to the east side. So what we've done is take that parking and we've made it parallel. That pulls it a little bit further away, allows the mounding and the landscaping to be a little denser for screening, and we don't get that headlight. We don't get the direct headlights into that space. So that would decreases the parking there a little bit. Also then eliminate some of the potential light pollution. That flips parking the other direction. Still has some room for screening. There's a fence along the property to the left. We can still screen with some bushes along that line too. Some space for that. As we move north, we talked about a pathway really the ultimate would probably connect to the north. Right now, we're just showing it connecting to the kind of reserve parkland to the north side of the site that's not used otherwise. We keep most of that as kind of reserve space, maintained but fairly natural, but have shown some parkland for dog walking, etc., a couple benches to the left side of what we're showing as a turnaround for fire vehicles. The bulb you see, that is a turnaround for fire vehicles, I noted. We did have recent conversations after this was presented. And there's two elements there. We probably wouldn't do a bulb. I think we would go to what was kind of a T formation after talking to fire, that would be allowed, which would be a lot less pavement and a little less intrusive on the site. And then ultimately, and I had a little conversation about curb cuts onto 42 and it being ODOT, et cetera. But we would start to at least pursue a northern curb cut on the site. That would ultimately probably assist the site as far as the residents, et cetera. It's an opposite way to get out. Would obviously some relieve some traffic on Alcott and that intersection ultimately. And then also would even serve our emergency vehicles, et cetera, a little bit better than a turnaround. So those elements, so we can't commit to it yet because of the timing that it would take, that would be pursued. So those are the two. The dotted lines you see up there related to the north side of the site, and again, we would modify in the final that bulb probably to a T that meets the requirements for the fire vehicles, the turnaround, etc. I think those are really the primary elements we wanted to touch upon and had altered on the site?
We really try to, obviously, as David's mentioned, like, be very mindful of, there is an established neighborhood next door. We don't want to disturb the neighbors, no matter like what growth is to come. So like, kind of finding the different elements of the mounding and making sure that we switch to parallel parking, like just trying to, those tweaks really truly do make a difference to the community members, so just kind of a general comment.
I mean, I like the idea of getting the access to 42, on the north side. I mean, I think that would be nice just to alleviate some of the traffic in the neighborhood. Something, and I don't know how it would work is even like I won't say a path, but something, just like the bollards or whatever for emergency vehicles if they, needed that extra egress. I just wonder, even just making like a walking path, that way it could connect through up on that side, because that would get you kind of the north side up through to like the Deer Dutchman property. So, was the Marion Reserve where they kind of talked about having like the emergency egress, but it was kind of part of the path. Wonder if that would be an option, just, even if you couldn't get a drive, just having just sort of an access for emergency vehicles.
Yeah, sometimes they do it depends what fire would accept, but sometimes we've done, pervious pavers there that they can drive on across that you don't even know are there, other than they would have it, or like you said.
Right,
sometimes
yeah,
at the
something
end
like
there's
that.
a bollard that keeps people from driving in it, or those are things we could, that's,
Yeah, I was just thinking if you
until
can't
you get a cut or
can't
something.
get, if you can't get the cut, but if it's something just for the emergency, because then that would help tie into the, kind of the connectivity to get through up to West Ave along the 42 side right there.
I like the parallel parking along the residential side. Is there any more thought given to having that for the apartment complex tenants to kind of, then it's a little bit more like they have preferred
Like
parking?
the reserved parking almost.
Yeah, we discussed that last time, we just
Yeah.
we didn't identify it yet. I think there's probably a little thought as you get into,
Yeah, I think.
a
like,
little bit into
once they-
leasing, I don't wanna lock them in at, you're
It's
too far
definitely-
away, but
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah,
options.
so I think, when you live in an apartment, it feels nice that you have a reserved spot. You know exactly where you can park every time. So I think within the association and everything, they would kind of have that as an element and an amenity to an extent for their residents.
I was just thinking too, like that would be an added, like where you you have the people who are renting and they're versus just like someone random coming in
Oh,
to
yeah.
go to a business that you might not know as much, yeah.
I know on the last time Mr. Swank brought up is just kind of the parking numbers, and just looking through on some of the counts I had just with our code, the 80 spaces seems really light on the numbers. I think just not counting probably what our code has for restaurants, I'm looking somewhere in the neighborhood of like, depending on how you mix up the retail, somewhere of like 77 to 94 would be required for our code. You only have 80 there, and like I said, that doesn't count the restaurant requirement, because I don't know if it's going to be a sit down or fast food, how it gets classified, but just watch, just double check all that stuff. We can look on the codes, but
Yeah, and I did some double checking after your comment the other day, and depending on the uses, obviously, of those retail spaces, some of them don't go by total square footage, it goes by this customer area or the
Yeah.
show floor, so there's, depending on the uses going there, it could fluctuate quite a bit. And obviously, a sit-down restaurant is based off of seats, how many seats you have, maximum occupancy. So yeah, those would be things that, when they look at those uses, what uses they put in there, that's obviously gonna have a play in the amount of parking.
So I understand and appreciate that comment, that information. The uses may change over the years, right? The parking lot will stay the same
That's correct.
regardless. So how will that get managed? Like, if they only do 80 parking places, as Mr. Harriman is saying, then they'll have to restrict the uses somewhere along, you know, from a management standpoint.
Yeah.
And then how does the village monitor or maintain that, from like zoning? I mean, I don't know how like we monitor and we restrict what they can do with their building at that point.
We have, so when a new business comes in, they have to do our occupancy, our certificate of zoning, and at that time, we establish what the parking number is, what they need. So let's just say worst case, this is what's constructed, they have all tenants except for one, and the last tenant comes in and parking requirement is over, something's gonna have to change. At that point, that would cause something.
So there's a mechanism in place to monitor that and to address it. Okay.
Yeah, we run into it all the time. You can walk into one venue and you don't want to overpark it, and you walk in another one and they want to overpark it, not knowing what you have, and then there's extra spaces. So we want to at least hit what would be a minimum, go over slightly. But one option is certainly to dash in where you could have expanded parking if you needed it, because if you did, I don't think we're close to a maximum lot coverage scenario, et cetera. So we'd look at that, but we could dash in where you would have future parking. So you're not over parking it, but if you get in that situation, someone does want to provide, you end up with whatever, 5 medical offices that have parking at 250 rather than 200 or whatever, you can handle it. So,
And just for like discussion's sake, the parcel that's just to the north of it, I think we asked about it. Obviously, it's not part of this drawing, but are there discussions with that other property owner? Like would it expand the scope of this project further to the north?
Yeah, so the, current property owners for what we're proposing have definitely communicated and tried to kind of come to some negotiation, obviously, with that northern piece, because it changes the entire vision
Correct.
of this parcel, both parcels together, essentially. I don't think that's currently within the village, right? It's a township property, yeah. So obviously we'd go through the process of the annexation and everything, but I know there's been multiple conversations over the months, and I think it's just about negotiating the
Yeah.
deal and such.
Because if you have that property, it'll probably change some of the parking issues and maybe.
well, we
alleviate-
understand, right, and we understand what the future would look like.
Right.
This is fixed, right? This is fixed, approved, built, not whatever, how it would work or there's a couple options on how it would work, but generally how it would work with the next
Gotcha.
properties north. So just as in doing any other development, tying it in potentially for the future and not hamstringing what we have and not hamstringing what could potentially happen
For
in the
sure.
future. So.
But this layout here wouldn't, for what your future plan would be, this wouldn't be affected really
Flows
much.
right into what we would refer as like a phase 2, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
If, knock on wood, everything works out with that, we would look at that as like a phase 2, and then making sure that the entire flow from what we're proposing here into the new is seamless.
And what Mr. Harriman said about the lane, or you even addressed the lane to the north. And obviously, I think that would be ideal to have that for the additional access points. The only concern I have with that is, and I certainly can't tell from this drawing, but on the other side of 42, where Jefferson Village is at, I know it's kind of close, so I don't know where it's at, but having misaligned driveways or access points tends to be problematic with traffic, as they're pulling out, because this guy wants to pull out and this guy wants to pull out, and they can't really see what each other are doing.
Right.
And when I've tried to compare it on the map, and very rough drawings, it looked like it's not aligned.
It's not. There's their entrance. I know everybody can't see that.
Right.
It's.
Yeah, so about 2 football fields apart or so.
No, about 175 feet.
175 feet.
Yeah, from center of drive to center of drive.
Which is probably even worse than 2 football fields, honestly.
Right, 2 football fields is fine, you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
We understand that.
Yeah. Anyway.
we're limited at the location we can show it now clearly. But, yeah, we're,
And
aware.
obviously, like, given the road, we'd have to coordinate all this with ODOT and stuff, and we all know their particulars. I know we'll go through the steps and make sure that the 2 football fields, maybe more like 1.5, and,
Yeah.
get their
Well,
blessing.
and you know, I mean, even if it were, you know, a right turn out
I see.
only, maybe that, you know,
Yeah.
could alleviate that, but I mean, just having that extra point would, I think certainly improve the flow in the property itself, but. you know.
Yeah, so even just like a, exit only type of, right turnout, like you said, just something just to alleviate some flow.
Right turn in, right turn
Right
out.
turn in, right turn out.
With the turn lane.
I mean, that would actually help alleviate an Alcott then.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a right turn in with the turn lane coming in, and
Yeah.
then just a right turn out exit would be.
Yeah.
I just don't know,
Hopeful.
I just don't know how that would work, and this go way in the weeds, but, with the existing township property and that not being there, if you can,
Well, we would,
now we'd be taking over a lot more with that, to
Yeah.
get that right turn lane. but-
Yeah, I mean, it potentially means,
Yeah.
Well, there may be enough right-of-way easement there, I can't tell from the map because it's owned by the township property, but there's a right-of-way easement on that.
Yeah, say the state route should have.
Another point, just, we'll need to work through probably some right-of-way. There's probably gonna be a right-of-way dedication on the north piece, because technically you own out to the center line, so we'll wanna get that as a dedication. But we may need a little more width-wise, so it matches up with the right-of-way, because it's a different right-of-way width to the north end than it is from the south end. And as we continue to develop along 42, we need to make sure we've got enough right-of-way for the future.
yeah, we're aware.
Just looking with this, and this may get more in the engineering, but stormwater, plans in there, how are you guys gonna be managing that?
We've had Civil look at it preliminarily
Okay.
previous, so we haven't readdressed it yet on this one, but previously we had no real too much concern because we had a lot of space on the north. Now we're using a little more of that in this configuration, but we'll have an engineer and
Yeah.
I will tell you, yes.
Okay,
Hey, do you have your civils for this yet? Do you know who's doing that?
It was like a little bit of preliminary,
That's
just
fair.
based on like what was required for the packet.
Yeah.
Initially, but.
Just- Just make sure that whoever you select, they know, the groundwater recharge requirements that are in the Darby
Hey
permit,
Darby.
Yeah.
all of that will have to be accounted for.
and there wasn't anything on this, and I'm assuming, probably just looking at it, I think like our minimum open space, I assume you guys probably have that. I mean, with this parcel, it's pretty small, I think it'd be like just over 3/4 of an acre, some, I know 25%, being like 3 and change. I don't know what that north end is.
Yeah,
if
I
they-
had a number, we took it off of here, it's with the old development. The old development had,
I thought it had,
that number
I thought
kind
it
of
had
filed,
plenty in
yes.
there, so I think it was, I just didn't see it on this
Yeah.
one with kind of.
yeah,
the
we just
design.
didn't add it to this one because we didn't resubmit.
You're
Yeah,
talking up
civil
around
works.
this walking loop, is that?
Right, yeah, just making sure that we have that, and then, tying in if you get the, working in that, the middle phase, depending on how that goes, 2 phases, just, I guess you'd have double, or second phase would have its, open
Zone.
space requirement, going with that, so just as you run calculations, just double checking that.
Which there could be some courtyard area in the middle of that or something like that. I mean, they'll
Yeah,
certainly account for it.
Seems weird design-wise, but would we require a sidewalk on 42 in that tiny little north section?
I marked that up on mine.
Did you? Somebody's like, the sidewalk nowhere, but.
Well, yeah, but eventually it will be
comp
somewhere,
plan-
right?
Yeah, the comp plan, master plan has multi-use trail along 42.
Yeah.
So we've got to figure that out with how you get the sidewalk in the front, whether that needs to be a little bit wider for the multi-use part of it, because I know you want pedestrian access.
They have 10 foot.
We have 10 foot.
The north piece there, is that where you're talking?
I know, I'm talking about both sides.
Yeah.
He's talking about the, well,
Oh,
go ahead.
like our small,
A little piece
it's
up
so
there,
weird.
because you could work the drive-through,
where are we going?
but we have to.
Where's that taking us?
Right, we gotta get the little pieces.
Yeah.
Or at least set it up for,
Yeah,
so that it can be done, right? Make sure that there's place for the ramps.
Yeah.
To get across the road. But even on the south end, you've got 10 feet, but you're using that for pedestrian. I mean, there's gonna be doors, front doors into that. So you got door swings, you got somebody come right, potentially come by on a bike
With
So we
stroller
need-
on the back.
with the
Right.
stroller, yeah. Whatever, so we need to make sure that we're planning for that. So it's detailed.
It's all on there. It's a 5-foot setback from the thing. That's why the landscape bed is there, and then there's 10 feet of layout.
Got it.
But you'll see it on the,
Yep.
obviously when we get to the detail.
What about crosswalk across Alcott? How do we get into that?
How do we get into that?
I mean, like, we've got that neighborhood coming to the south there. I mean,
Well,
eventually
before
all of this would, yeah,
Yes.
you're right, there's that whole, the other parcel there, but
Restoration.
I mean, the whole-
or
the whole idea is that all that
restoration.
sidewalk connects, right? So we would need a crosswalk at Alcott.
Yeah.
We're requiring them to have sidewalk on the
Well, they're,
restoration.
they're building to Alcott, so they would have to put at least their
The
side
ramp.
ramp in.
Yep.
And then whatever happens to the south,
They'll have
whether
to do
it's
some-
village project or whether it's the other
Yeah.
project, they'll have to do their piece too.
Just be aware of
Well, I
this.
don't think it's a village project, because I think that even that sign and everything else is owned by that property. So, and it's not the homeowners association like they once thought, it's that property owner, for that whole block, so.
And depending on how the traffic stays with everything come too, I mean, there's already been some discussion of potentially a light or something there, so that would automatically kick in on the crosswalk there too.
I know some of the stuff here on the back path on the north end, just some of the 20-foot poles, just the, being mindful of neighborhood for the parking lot lighting, just the light pollution, just directional, so it's not going to the east. Yeah, just kind of cut off going that way, just making sure we're good on that. Now, is there any way with I'm just thinking the dumpster looking location, is there room could that be shifted more by the retail side, just a little bit further to the west? Just because there's I'm thinking, apartments going through there, no sidewalks or anything, and it's still quite a bit of distance, for people to be walking to get rid of their trash, if it could go to the, more next to the retail side where that parking lot ends over here.
First of all, you want to keep the trash a little bit away from where the residents are, so they're not picking up that, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to get an ability to you got to get an ability to get into the trash. That's a one-way across the top, so, you could potentially move it down slightly, but I don't really want the trash to be at the main entry, so, yeah. An ideal would be, kind of halfway between where it is in the corner towards the building. But you've got to be able to get in, right? So potentially where the center
Just seems like
is,
you've got 3 stores, you've got all the retail and a
you
restaurant. The
could
restaurant
potentially
there.
do a 45 in there and put a little parking lot there. That would be kind of the other option. But the truck obviously has to be able to.
Yeah, it's just
To
such
get
a
into
tough
it.
one.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I say, because even where it's at, it's really not a great.
Right, it's the
spot.
same
I mean, there's-
scenario where
there's-
it's at,
there's
right, you
no
still
good-
got to do like
There's really no good
45.
scenario in there.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
But
we
I
don't
was
want
just
to back
kinda-
it up, yeah, the first spot would be to back it up on that corner, well, we would cut through future, you don't want to do that, you don't want them too close to apartments, because then you don't want to pick up odors in summer or whatever, so we elected to move it up a little
Now, I do want to mind that it's close to residential. You talk about odors, the houses that are right there, they, are getting the odors. So, it's trying to find a middle ground. I know you're concerned about the residents on the property, but you got to remember the odors for the residents that are behind it too.
It's the
They're
odor-
100 some
odor-
feet away.
I
the
think
odor
like when
control
you look
section.
at the other dimensions, it kind of seem like the
Control
amount
check.
of the distance is truly in between.
Okay.
So, yeah, obviously keeping, nobody wants odor, like, no neighborhood, no
Right.
apartment, house, anything. So,
Right.
Yeah, hopefully have
as much
none,
as we can
but yes.
control.
I asked them, and you may just know from reviewing our zoning code and whatnot, but are there requirements for the size of the dumpster, the enclosure, or the number of dumpsters that are needed? I mean, it looks like there's a dumpster that is drawn there, but you know, with the retail, there's what, 7 retail spaces and then a restaurant space. The restaurant generates quite a bit of trash generally. And then you've got 2 floors of residential above that. So I'm wondering size requirements.
Yeah, I didn't see something and
Derek is
yeah,
looking.
Derek would know, I don't think there was something. It does need to be screened, correct? There is room on that to add a second dumpster to the south of it, as needed. Depends on, you know, City of Columbus has requirements for how many times you're picking it up, so you document all that with them. And that same thing can be done. In this case, yeah, it'd probably be a daily pickup. But there's enough room to put jog another one down in that same area. So it's
Staggered almost,
staggered, yes.
if you remove the tree. Maybe, I don't know, but whatever. As long as you're aware of it, and as long as it's addressed on our side. So, I mean, obviously, nobody wants, you know, the overflowing dumpsters of it. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know of anybody that does daily pickups out here, you know, from a trash pickup standpoint. I mean, like our restaurants downtown, the Granary and stuff, I mean, they struggle through weekly pickups. And they've asked for more frequent pickups.
Really?
And
Not
apparently
getting
can't
it?
get them. So that's, you know, another reason that you ask about the size, you know, capacity wise.
Hey, Mr. Hutchinson, since we don't know the type of businesses going in here, I know that the loading zones in the parking section are somewhat designated towards, you know, type of business. So how would you configure, because I don't see any loading spaces here. I think we're big enough scale that you probably need some.
Yeah, so what they had mentioned, is about possibly designating, was it the parallel parking or a
Towards the
designated loading
parallel,
spot?
yeah, towards the parallel parking spot, yeah. Yeah, technically, I would agree it does not meet the full requirement because it's not clear 24 hours, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we'll have to look at I mean, it depends on the uses, so that'd be something that they'll also have to be mindful when the uses start coming in.
Yeah.
If something's gonna require, I mean, I can't imagine, nothing is gonna need a loading dock or anything like that.
No,
But,
but a restaurant's gonna require a lot more, you know,
mhm,
off-street loading and unloading.
you know, and maybe it's those parallel parkings that's just north of, not along the residential side, but maybe it's designating some of those as loading spaces that's just adjacent to, parallel to the building there on Malcom.
Yeah, I think that's generally where it fits in.
Is
that one
We
way,
could work with you guys on that. Yes, one way, yes,
east or west?
around. You Pull in next,
One way, one west, okay.
come out east. You're gonna look for parking immediately as close as you can get, right? And then you're gonna circle back out.
I'm just gonna park on 42.
What's that? Yeah, if you want to.
That'll go well for about,
Park across the street in the lot.
So, you know, the other thing, just looking at park, and I don't know, you know, especially with apartments and, you know, EVs for charging, like, I don't think we have any, like, real requirements, but I mean, you know, well, we'll see, but some automakers, you know, going fully EV, you know, here in a few years, you know, that's gonna be probably a concern, especially for residents in there. I don't know how, we don't have any restrictions for that or how that would go, but
That's all we should talk about.
I mean, I think that's probably something to think about, because, I wouldn't like to be, having my electric
Stuck,
car,
right.
not being able to charge at my house.
Yeah.
There's lots of options, and there's options to put in some of the infrastructure
Yeah.
and not put in the chargers now and have it planned.
Be
Yeah.
accommodated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be just running, electrical on the,
Right, run your conduit.
on
so you
on
got
the
it.
east side. and
You
just
run your
have it-
pole and power.
Yeah.
Something we should look at the code though.
I see.
If you had a
Yeah, that's what I was
phase
thinking,
two,
I'm like, if I'm in code
More
for it, probably
spaces
just-
to
You
plan,
can kind of
something
accommodate
like that.
the electric car
That's a good
folks.
point. Mr. Hutchinson, question for you on building height. I see, the only way to look at this, I think, is just currently is the multifamily building. Do we have a mixed use?
For the height requirement.
For the height requirement,
Height requirement is, for our code right now, is 35 feet.
35 feet?
Yeah, so they'll.
To the eve.
To the, yep,
To the eve, not to the peak?
Correct.
that's correct.
It's almost impossible to do that with any type of peak roof if you're gonna address that type of, it's just not, you can't do it. So you need to look at it probably, or, look at it before we have to apply for variance, that's great, whatever, but it becomes, or modifying it to the medium height or median height or whatever. There's some other ways to look at it.
And I think something
to
in
do
this
it.
case, I mean, worst case, if required a variance, we would support that.
That's where I was going with it. Did you need to apply for a variance on that or not?
That would be, we know we'd have variance for that at this point.
Okay.
Probably at this point, unless and we can, figure out the detail whether we have a variance for loading or at least, and it might, I think we'd have some loading, it might modify size slightly, but those are the two things that kind of.
And then, and I don't know if this will go with the variance, is on the north end with the town, and we've kind of talked about it as like the buffering or the building setbacks. I guess, I know we have it for, Plain City to Plain City, but going up to township, is that, is that part of a variance that you would put in for that side, since it's not really
So
in?
I had a long conversation today, staff had a discussion today about that, because we have multiple sites annexing in that are adjacent to non-city. Our code is specific when it comes to buffering and screening to our zoning districts, not outside zoning districts. Not to say that means we're gonna do whatever we want, we don't care about that, but we wanna take that into consideration. But there is not a zoning requirement that requires us to buffer between a non-city or non-village property.
Okay.
Yeah, we checked and know, Ohio Revised Code has a default screening buffering code, but once a city establishes a zoning code with a screening and buffering, it defaults to that. So if you notice here, from this one, from the original one, they did add some landscaping, at least on the interior section along the parking lot of that interior lot there.
And I'm just trying to think, and I don't know if you have room or how the landscaping, I'm just picturing, walking with kids, is, you have the sidewalk kind of on the border, but nothing really on the interior, or if you're on the parking spaces that are on the north side, you have to cross. in that island area, you know, I don't know, is there room to have more of a walkway or a sidewalk that, you know, you could cross, you know, if you're going from the north lots, going down and kind of cross through the aisleway instead of just having to walk through the parking lot? I don't know if there's any room for that or not.
There is, potentially.
Potential, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, you're walking past one car, another car, you do it between the cars. Is
Yeah,
that
it's
good?
like-
You want people, you know, but, yeah, you can put a, there's a couple I mean, it'll adjust slightly anyways, but you could put a little. Rather than people trampling through the bushes anyways, you might as well provide them a location at least.
Yeah, and it may be even by the restaurant side, just kind of extending that sidewalk out next to the parking lot and have a little mini crosswalk on the side. I'm trying to figure out how you can minimize walking in the parking lot and be on a path area.
Seeing internal stairwells, is that correct?
Yes.
Will there be any elevators or just gonna be stairs for the?
We have, we do not have to have an elevator for a three-story. It's kind of an option still, we're looking. We get into pricing, you'll see. An
Okay.
elevator makes sense, leasing, pricing, yeah.
But you don't have any apartments on the ground level at all,
Right.
so how,
Second,
for
third.
ADA
Third,
compliance?
second, third story.
Okay,
So once you don't have to have ADA compliance at 20 or less.
okay.
Unless you do provide one on the first floor, then you do.
Did you say if you have a first floor apartment and then second and third, then you have to?
If you had a first floor apartment, so if you have 20 or less, you do not have to provide accessibility. There's some other things you do need to do, but you don't have to provide accessibility. If you have, if you did provide one
Oh.
on the first level,
Then they all have.
then you would have that one would be accessible.
Oh,
It's not really accessible, it would be a type A, but for all intents and purposes, it'd be accessible. So if you did one on the first floor, you would make it accessible. But if you're 20 or less, you do not have to have any that are.
Is, I know it's not irrelevant to this, but is that per building or is that like for a project? Meaning like if you had 15 actual
Per
structures.
building, you
per
can't
building.
start using, it. Yeah, there's, in this case, it's per building.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Brian, do you see anything,
No, we had, I know I responded to email about the turnaround and those items, which either way, I mean, the cul-de-sac, like they have designed, meets the requirements, but they have other options. But I think we agree, our preference would be for, well, the second, like the second cut, yeah, and the next comment would be too. But in the absence of that, I don't think the option would work.
I feel like you have addressed like a lot of the concerns that we had from that initial concept discussion and everything, and appreciate taking in our comments into consideration on this next phase.
Yeah, I was gonna echo that as well, just, you know, especially being real mindful there of the residents behind, seeing the changes with the mounding and the landscaping is appreciated.
And we want this to be, we're hoping this is a benefit to those residents. Well, it's obviously, entire community, but hopefully it serves them, so.
All right, and then I guess the the traffic study, was that added in, or will that be coming with the preliminary, tied in with everything else?
We had submitted that, obviously a little bit different given the fact that we don't have the drive-through now, but.
And once again, the same traffic engineer is
Been doing everything.
all of our
Yeah.
development, so it's really nice to have that one guy doing everything, because everything's being able to be added in and accounted for.
Yeah.
He definitely had a good laugh when we first talked about it. He was like, oh, yeah, just
All right, how many numbers? We'll just add that to the,
He's got all the counts.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that they're still charging the full rate.
I was gonna say, this is gonna cost you $5,000. Done.
We laughed and then he said, this is still full price. So
Right.
full price with a quick turn.
Thank you for his knowledge.
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
thank you.
I don't have anything else.
I don't have
Good.
anything else.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, for being responsive and talking about it and feedback and stuff. It's helpful. You get to the end and all of a sudden it's, all kinds of new elements, so appreciate it.
No, we want to hit everything.
Really good conceptual discussions now, so I mean, this is probably more in-depth discussion we've had in a lot of our development, so, preliminary will be next, so it should be, a smooth transition going into there, getting ready. So
Yeah,
we'll be in contact, so we can get that going.
Great, thank you.
So, all right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to item number 2. So we'll have our public hearing for ZC 23-3. So we have anybody here to speak for that public hearing? Okay, so with that, we have it open. Nobody's here, so it opened at 7:33, and we'll close our public hearing at 7:33 for ZC 23-3. So with that, item number 3, ZC 23-3, amending the codified ordinance, the addition of chapter 1185.06 for a uptown commercial overlay district to part 11 of the planning and zoning code.
Yeah, so what I have from y'all tonight is basically would be the replacement for the design review, chapter 13 of the building code. This is how it's being proposed as an overlay district that would overlay the very close to what the historic boundaries were. This is just a tad bit smaller. It keeps it focused on just the corridor of Main Street and a little bit on the north and south of Chillicothe. What this is something that we've been working with council for quite a while now, it seems like. And so what this is doing is, like I said, this is going to replace the DRB section. So we will remove the historic design review district, that whole entire chapter of that. This overlay will replace that. And what this does is we want to keep the historic look, we want to keep the historic feel. This will, previously we had what we call a fast track. So certain things could come through administration and then more bigger projects went through the design review board. This would we would do the similar thing. There's items that would come through administratively, then things that are identified as major would come to the planning and zoning board. Just like any other business in any other district. When there's a major site plan, it comes to planning and zoning. So these are actually a little more strict than a major site plan because it deals more with the characteristics and the materials and stuff than other districts. The goal is to maintain that feel and everything in the uptown. So what this is a lot. This is taken in a lot of account of what has been approved from the DRB in the past years. It takes into account for methods and materials that are traditionally in a historic uptown or in a historic district. It does take a little bit of the red tape out of when it comes to, when it comes to a historic district, it technically will not be a true historic district, but we have historical characteristic guidelines in this overlay district. So I have the perimeters in there attached also with, I sent you did you have a map? Did you see a copy of the map? And then also a companion guide. So this companion guide will be more illustrative, a more visual of examples, not only from our village now, but from other places that kind of get the idea. So this was ideally, time-wise, we wanted to get this to this board as soon as we could. That's kind of why we really didn't discuss it and kind of did the public hearing to get it from you, because council ideally would like to start fresh in the first year with a new program or new code. So I will open it now just to any discussions, comments, concerns on this proposed code.
Well, my first question would be, if, obviously we're doing away with one section of the code, that being the historic district or whatever, the design review board. So can you highlight anything in there that changes with this? So like, we're obviously trying to rectify some problems that have popped up over the years. So what are the differences? How does this differ, other than everything coming to planning and zoning versus there having to be a completely separate board that has to be staffed and all that stuff? What are some of the things that have changed between the two codes?
Yeah, so the original, well, what's in there now in chapter 13, and kind of how we've got to where we are now with trying to find a new solution, is in that chapter 13:27, it highlights regulations that the village has put forth for that district. But what really confuses it when they reference the historical preservation guidelines, which is common in most historic districts, either refer to those or use those solely. And the problem with that is we have a conflicting code. We have a code that states one thing and then it references another code that completely contradicts what that says. So eliminating that portion or referring to any outside code step one will reduce a lot of controversy and I guess opinions, what's historically appropriate or not. Like I said, we want to maintain that feel and that look, and there was a couple different options that were presented to council, whether we do away with our chapter 13 village code verbiage and go strictly to the historic guidelines, which is basically is to the extreme. I mean, it would have to follow materials, everything of those guidelines. And how we evaluated and how we kind of came to this is, we did an inventory of really what we have, the size of our uptown, and truly the amount of buildings that are truly still in that true historic state. Most of the buildings have already been either renovated or had been damaged and completely rebuilt. There's not much in uptown that looks like it did originally. So with that moving forward, it does put a hinder on projects that want a redevelopment on these buildings for different uses or different types of projects, because it's either they have to go completely historic, and there wasn't much bad. So this was a solution that we would be able to keep that historic feel. And this was only commercial related, not residential. That was another kind of controversial thing, is our other code did state residential, but yet we have never regulated residential.
Well, you know, so one thing that you said there, and I think it's important to like highlight it, you said you want to maintain the historic feel. And as I look through some of the pictures, you know, in the, whatever the guide is, whatever you call it, you know, I look through there and I see a lot of things that, you know, give that look and feel. You know, even though it may be new, you know, you're not truly restoring it to what it was in 1909 or 1887 or 1986. You know, I mean, like there are so many different eras in the downtown. I mean, like, there's only maybe a couple of buildings downtown that I would consider historic. And somehow we want to try to morph all the buildings that aren't historic into something that aren't. And it doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't seem reasonable. A lot of people, or a few people, have spent a lot of money to do a lot of really, really good things downtown, in my opinion. And like, you know, when you look, and I don't know where some of these pictures are from, but you know, this one, it says R.K. Morris Realtors, all of New Albany. You know, that's not a historic building with the, you know, the wood siding on it, but it definitely gives that historic feel. So the historic feel that you say, I mean, it seems to make a lot of sense to me, rather than, you know, the extreme of what you said of going just to historic standards, where you have to restore it to a T to this, and that just doesn't make sense. And then, you know, further you'd say, you know, like looking at, I know that some of the businesses downtown, you know, they're going to put a distillery in where the Clock Tower building's at. They've made an application for, and I think approved for, you know, garage doors. Okay, well, the garage doors, I don't think they had garages like for horses and buggies, or, I mean, like whatever. I'm not trying to be facetious, but it's, you know, they didn't exist, but that doesn't mean that they can't have that feel. And I think that I think that the garage doors are fine. I think the appearance that they give blends in well with the downtown and creates something that people want to go to. I mean, it's just, it makes it inviting, and it's so I mean, everything that you've said, you know, certainly makes sense. And I think, you know, I mean, you know, like I said, there are people that have spent a lot of money downtown, and some are doing, I think most of them are doing really, really good work, even if they're not all doing the exact same work. And, you know, to look at it from that perspective, and then, you know, factor in so many different eras of buildings. I mean, there are buildings downtown that have vinyl siding on them. And, you know, or stucco, or, I mean, and it's just like, and I'm not knocking those buildings, but to focus on a garage door and then allow vinyl siding doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then, you know, some of the buildings, and they're not any fault of anybody, it's just what has, you know, they've been added onto, or maybe they've been renovated and they didn't have standards at that time. So again, I think what you said, I mean, having a common sense approach to the way that, you know, things are done makes a lot of sense, right? And I don't think that trying to restore buildings that are so far past their historical preservation makes any sense at all. I think it all becomes cost prohibitive. I think that it's going to turn potential investors or potential developers away from wanting to invest any money downtown, because they might be willing to invest, say, $1 million in a project, but they may not be willing to invest $5 million. And the $1 million, and I mean, I wouldn't just say that, that's good enough. I mean, it's like substantially better than what, you know, may already exist. And I think that those things, I don't think any of those things should be lost on anybody. And I think I like the common sense approach that what you're saying. And I'll be honest, and maybe you guys have, but I'll be honest, I have not reviewed the design review board code and compared it line by line with this. I've got a general understanding of what the DRB does and what you know, how parts of that code read. I was involved on I guess the consumer side of it, you know, trying to get a sign downtown. So I'm like, I do have a little bit of an understanding of how things go, but I don't know the code verbatim. and I didn't compare it line by line, but you know, like what I have read in the new proposed chapter, and then obviously the guide that you've provided, the pictorial reference. What word did you use?
Companion guide.
Companion guide. You know, I think that, I mean, to me, that just, you know, depicts things very well, in my opinion, for what the downtown, you know, could be. And I mean, I think that 90% of the buildings that you have pictured, I would take that over some of the buildings that have, you know, fallen into disrepair over the years. And it's not just, you know, that's better than what's already there. It's nice still, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, that's my 2 cents,
I mean,
or 12.
The bones of all the structures are still there, regardless of what they look like on the outside, you know, there's just, you know, and it's not necessarily for developers to save money, you know, that was not the point of this, it wasn't just allow anybody to come in and not be able to afford to do it. They still have to do nice quality work, and we're still requiring things, but, you know, some things though, that did take a long time to do simpler things like signs. I mean, any type of sign had to come through that board, even if it's identical to one that was already pre-approved. This way, it's going to allow all signs just to come through our department and deny it, because as long as it meets, you know, meets those standards. So some things are going to be a lot easier on business owners and building owners. And then just like anywhere else in the village, I mean, if a company's going to do anything exterior-wise, modification, major stuff, it's going to come here. It's really no different. You know, and with the making more things administratively approval through this overlay, it's not going to put a huge burden on the P&Z board. It won't, because you won't see a majority of the stuff that goes to the DRB right now is more cosmetic, more signage, that kind of stuff. So, you know, that was one thing that I wanted to make sure about moving any new process to this board is we're busy enough already as it is. I don't want to overload this.
Is the DRB coming here? Is that what happened? Okay.
No, yeah, they'll be,
Now,
It's still gonna be continually separate, still separate.
DRB,
There'll be
There-
no
the
DRB.
board will be eliminated.
So will there be some oversight on what you can and can't do I mean, you're saying yes, but is that just administratively or that will
Well,
come here?
So a minor
yes,
site
that's what I'm
plan,
saying.
yeah.
There's still oversight.
Yeah, so like minor stuff will come to me.
Yep.
Come through our office. And then major site plans, just, you know, if it's structural, if they're knocking a new hole in the wall or anything like that, anything like any other business in town will do, they're gonna come to you guys.
But even like changing exterior material would come to us,
Exactly.
which is fine.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
There's still oversight.
yeah, right, exactly, that's where I was getting at with that. And I would say, I think I know the answer to this question, but is there any historical registered buildings downtown?
One,
There is.
yeah, the bank building is the only.
The bank building is on the historical
Yeah,
registry,
so property owners still have the option. I mean, they could choose to restore a building is back to accurate as they want to.
Yep.
It is, the whole point, my understanding of the DRB, when the DRB was put together back in 2008, at that time, the village did, or at least at that time, they wanted to pursue to become a certified city for historic. Changes of administration, changes of council, staff, that's no longer, it's not on the table.
Yeah.
And so it really, you know, it's one of those things that's kind of confuses things. It blurs that line a little bit, why we necessarily were.
Yeah, and I think that those buildings that are downtown, like, you know, one of them you have pictured is the McCune building, and, you know, obviously we know the clock tower, we know the bank, and those things, but I mean, really outside of those and maybe, you know, one other building, and maybe not even that other building, but I mean, like, and this isn't to disparage any of the buildings that are down there, it's what's progressed, it's what's happened over the years, right? But I mean, even go as far as the library, there's nothing historical about the library, but it's a very nice looking building that fits in with the area, right?
Yeah, and I even be careful with that word historical. I mean, from an architectural perspective, it's like, for something to be historical, it has to have something revolutionary or an event happen there or something. I mean, just because a building old doesn't make it historical. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of buildings built back in the day were beat, you know, just like today. They were built on the cheap. You know, maybe these weren't, but a lot of them were. And technically that's historical by the definition we seem to be using if they used
Yeah.
materials that were from 1909. So I
use it loosely, I guess.
exactly. I just be careful. I mean, I have conversations with people when they say that they're historical. I said, well, why? Like was it a revolutionary material usage?
Yeah.
No. Did an event happen there? No. Well, then it's a nice old building,
Right.
and so.
Yeah, so I definitely use it looser than
Yeah.
what you.
Yeah, right.
But, I just, going down, I mean, there's a gas station downtown that just doesn't, have that appearance. There's, and again, this is nothing against those structures. I mean, it's just what has progressed over the years. So to me, when you have those structures that are there and then you're going to force a couple of different property owners to, update their buildings to such a much higher standard.
It's intense.
I mean, it's very intense, and it just does not make sense to me.
Now, more importantly, will this now allow for more
I'm sorry, did you
consistency?
say more importantly than anything I was saying?
But no, I mean, are we gonna, administratively coming through everything for all the different property owners in the uptown area? Is this gonna allow for more consistency
Yeah.
with the process going through? So that way, it's buildings or property aren't gonna be individually targeted. Everybody's basically getting equal treatment across the board.
Definitely, it will be more consistent, not only for existing, but for new structures as well. For example, if we do have some vacant lots, within this area, if they have something new built, it's gonna be built not to look like the old buildings, but it's still gonna have to have some type of chart, it's gonna have to have those fixtures and setbacks. They're gonna have to be built up in line like a traditional uptown, all the buildings are. They're not gonna be placed in the back of the lot.
Well, I think like that downtown Dublin,
Right.
they've done a nice job, because I know a lot of the stuff like where Mazzo's is, or,
Mhm.
those they look, historic of the time, probably the early 1900s, somewhere in that time. But they were built in probably, 2010
I was gonna
or
say, yeah.
2005,
Yeah,
something
early
like that.
2000s, yeah. Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, like the consistency for them, I think that it's streamlining the process because you're not going across 3 or 4 different, spots or boards. And then, like you said, there's still a degree of oversight, and then the expectations are fairly clear as to what, is expected down there. I don't know. It makes a lot of sense. I know I've talked to, and I'll stop.
Yeah.
But I've talked to a couple of property owners down, and and I've heard some of the frustration through the existing. And I know, from a personal standpoint, and it was minor, but what I had to go through just for the sign is it's just a lot. And especially, we're talking, these are all small business owners who are trying to operate an actual business. And, it's different than the developer that was just in that is, starting fresh, and he's going and doing the whole thing, and he's going to build that building and then walk away from it. These are people who are trying to run a business. And, the burden that I think is placed on them right now is maybe not insurmountable, but it's close. And I think this is a very common sense approach, in my opinion.
I think for me, to chime in, was when the church was looking at getting their stained glass replaced and everything, and all the hoops and hurdles.
The Presbyterian church or the Methodist church?
No,
Like on North Chillicothe
no,
Street?
next to Brick House Blue. I'm trying,
Oh,
South
the
Chicago.
south, just right there,
yes.
the south,
So
yeah.
it was,
church,
I know what building you're talking about, yeah.
yes.
yeah,
but
just on the
they-
south side of the old municipal
Mhm.
building.
They had a hard time
Yes.
too, and finally, because connected with the right person to
Yeah.
be able to present and work with them and get the right quote for them, they were
The
going.
Terriers end up helping with
Yes,
that, correct?
months, it took them months to, get to that point, and they were at wit's end. So, it's not only just like the business, but, our churches that were in that historic district. So from a council standpoint, it checks everything. I really like the companion
Got it.
guide, because that's what we've been asking for many years. So Mr. Hutchinson, I know you've spent a lot of time working on this and many hours, so I appreciate all the effort that you have put into this, so that whoever comes into the village to purchase a building or to invest, they get an idea and that sense of feel.
So, I do notice, so the painting of exterior walls, a minor change, so that goes through you on the administration side, so. Okay,
The precedent has been set. I
Yeah.
think it's.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, there's a list of accepted colors. I come in with that color, yes, you can do that. It's on an approved list. Like, why would there be any other debate about it? It just doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
Prove that it's on the Sherwin-Williams historical list, whatever that name is, and you're good to go. Like, it doesn't need to go in front of a board, and honestly, it's ridiculous.
so I know you have the guide here, and I was just trying to look through, is there any reference in the code to this, the companion guide? Because I could see the companion guide's more of, I call it more of like a living document
Sure.
versus being the code, so this one could probably change as probably stuff pops up.
Exactly, I didn't want to put anything in this, just, obviously, it's easy to update, and be able to change it up as we do. I mean, Jason and I have already started very similar things to almost everything we're doing to developers. When they come in, they have a guide that looks almost just like this, of what we're looking for new developments. So it's kind of a part of an entire library of companion guides that we have. So I didn't want to reference it in the code, but when a new business in Uptown comes in with their occupancy permit, they'll get a copy of this.
Well, and
And I
I would
was-
just speak to that, and it just popped in my head because you mentioned it, but I mean, like, it would be very easy for you solely to go and change pictures and kind of change the scope of what the intent of the downtown is. So can there at least be some sort of an approval process for the companion guide to either come in front of this board or, I don't know, it just makes sense. I mean, you would want there to be consistency, like what you're saying. And not just you or whoever might follow you in your job to say, well, I don't really like the looks of this building, I'm gonna go more modern.
So the idea to me is why we only have a few Uptown pictures in there, is because we only have a few
buildings, right.
kind of examples to use. So as things are approved and as our Uptown approves, this will hopefully be all Uptown
Plain
pictures
pictures,
in here.
Makes a lot of
So,
sense.
yeah.
Things like awnings though, when people put awnings on buildings, that'll come to this board then. Is there no?
Anything that structurally changes on a building will come to this board.
Just one other thing, and I don't think it's gonna affect too many buildings, and I can't find this because I'm trying to find it right now. Is just under the signs, I thought I saw somewhere like the signs is like only one per building. I was trying to think of what we have, I think maybe the bank building might be one of the few that would have, I think, two entrances, being a quarter building. Would that be something, to me, you'd wanna have, if you had a sign over the door, if you'd have over both doors,
Yeah.
that would make, like I said, there's probably only one or two buildings that would
So
probably.
that's covered in the sign code itself. I didn't want to get into the weeds as far as what's required in the sign code here, other than just aesthetics with the theme of this Uptown overlay district. But in the sign code itself, that regulates the number and size of signs. And so I mentioned that I'm working on the draft right now on a new sign code, so it'll reference the section to the Uptown corridor district.
And if you had the building like the bank building, which I think that the last I heard, they want to put multiple different businesses in, there would be provision for multiple signs.
Yeah,
on the
same with
outside.
McCoon and in the other buildings that have multiple stories. If there's businesses, there'd be, obviously, we don't want the entire building to look like a NASCAR, with all the sponsors and stuff.
Right.
But it's gonna be done tastefully.
Okay.
So. Yeah, we don't want to exclude it because you're on a second story, not to be able to have a sign, but,
No, I think this is a step in the right direction for hopefully eliminating some of the messes that have kind of transpired here in the last, 12 months, 24 months with stuff down there, so. Thank you for doing that, and hopefully that makes everybody's lives easier.
So,
So I will move to approve ZC 23-3.
second.
Mr. Harriman?
Yes,
Mr. Swank?
Yes.
Mayor Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll have ZC 23-4 public hearing. So I will open comments on that if anybody's here to speak. Nobody's rushing the podium, so we'll close our public hearing for ZC 23-4.
Oh, you're just watching. Okay, just making sure.
All right, moving on, ZC 23-4, amending the codified ordinance 1137-02 definitions of part 11 of the planning and zoning guide.
Yeah, so this is really just a cleanup. So when we introduced our new PUD section and eliminated the old PID, PRD, PCD, it also eliminated the calculation of density. So this is just adding the actual calculation to the density definition.
So, and that answered the email that I sent
Yeah,
asking about that.
You
So,
emailed me, I'm like, wow, I just got done doing that. So, yeah, so this one's, I mean, pretty simple. This is the exact calculation that we had before, it's just in the definition now instead of creating it.
perfect.
So motion to approve ZC-23-4?
I will second that.
Mr. Harriman?
Yes.
Mr. Swain?
Yes.
Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes.
All right. Moving on, ZC 23-5 public hearing. And, our two people in the audience left. And okay, so I'll go ahead and close our public hearing for ZC 23-5. So moving on, number 7, ZC 23-5, amending the codified ordinance of 1183.11 park fees of part 11 of the planning and zoning code.
So this is another cleanup one. We have park fees in 2 different sections of the planning and zoning code. In 2020, it was updated from 500 to 1,000, and the second part never was updated. So we have 2 sections that stayed 2 different amounts. So this is just bringing up to $1,000, which the other code section was updated in 2020.
Oh, yes. Okay, so motion to approve ZC-23-.
Oh, minor.
Yeah, I saw that too.
There's a PAR at the end there.
There's just a typo or something left over.
Looks
I was playing golf that day. I had a par on there. All right.
Okay.
That'd be it.
But yes, motion to, sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Motion to approve ZC-23-5
With the
With the amendment.
removing part.
with removing par from, with the removal of the wording.
Second.
Mr. Harriman?
Yes.
Mr. Swain?
Yes.
Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes.
Okay, and then, so, I guess we got clarified, no public hearing, this is more of a
not for
discussion,
action, this is just a
a
discussion.
discussion of ZC 23-6, amending our code for that. Okay,
Yeah, so this one is, like I said, the other ones were ones that we needed to get action going on. This one here, it was not immediate, but it is important though. So this is an entire new fence section. Our current code is very outdated to the point where our current regulations for fences, we do not regulate height. You can build as high as a fence as you want right now. So.
I need to
You haven't-
get on
You
it.
haven't built a fence yet, you wanna build a tall one, go out there right now and build it.
get my application for my 30
You,
foot
you
fence.
still can't, because you have a homeowners association.
Well, that's what I was gonna.
Yeah.
So is it neighborhood to neighborhood, or is this for just?
Just
This
village.
is, well, this is 6 foot is gonna be your maximum height
Sure.
back there for a privacy fence. So this does not, this is a city code, so, or village code, so if your homeowners association
Restriction
permits
first.
4 foot, then that's where
Got it,
we're going.
Yep.
But, yeah, so this is, this coverage goes a little more depth about where a fence can be placed. Most communities you go to, especially when it comes to corner lots are always an issue for fences, because right now, technically a corner lot, you have 2 front yards, you don't have a backyard, you have 2 front yards and a side yard.
You know something.
Because every street
Yeah,
frontage
sure
is a
do.
front yard.
My fences are open permits.
So, we have a lot of front yards that are completely fenced in, and it definitely creates a visibility, at the intersection for pedestrian and traffic. So, this is going to help regulate that, it's going to keep the fences in the back or side yards. deals with the height. It also deals with how high your fence can come to the front yard. You're still permitted a front yard fence, but it's gonna be very visible, more of a decorative feature than a, you know,
Privacy feature.
yeah. Those are probably the biggest changes. We've had, in our previous code, there must have been at one point, the one thing I think of is someone used chicken wire probably for a fence, and we didn't like that, so we put in there, no wired or metal mesh fence could have smaller openings than 4 inches in diameter. Now, pretty common split rail fences, people that have dogs, they'll do like maybe the nice galvanized dip, but I've done a search, it's hard to find a fence that comes with 4-inch openings, so we took that part out, and I just put chicken or livestock wire fences. I think it helps define that better, you know, than something that you're using, you know, it's more common sense. I mean, of course, we're not gonna permit a post or stick-in post with chicken wire and stuff, but yeah, if you're proposing a fence and you need enclosure for your animals, there's gonna be some materials that you can use that are approvable.
I noticed that kind of the code change, our existing code had fences and hedges. I noticed you dropped the hedges off.
Hedges are covered in our landscaping buffering, so and it's funny is, in that entire fence and hedges code section, it never mentions hedges in the code at all, just in the name.
Title.
Yeah,
So and I'll just pick my house for example. Backyard backs up to a commercial
Property.
zoning area. So how I read it is, if I put in the fence, it's 6 foot. If they put in the fence, it's 8 foot. So, like,
Can you pay?
can
them?
I put it, you know, one of those, you know, when we have buffering, you know, because it may be, there might be some people who are next to a commercial who, you know, that property owner may not want to put in any, you know, they might just put in the landscape buffering.
Yeah.
But the property owner may want to put in a fence, and it's like, well, it's, you know, if it was 6 inches this side or foot this side, it could be 8 foot. This side, it's only 6. You know, just trying to figure out, you know, how do we kind of match up the two, or can you say, hey, if you're, you know, residential backing up to a commercial, can they, you know, put in an 8 foot, since it would be approved for the commercial side to do that? And you don't have to do that, just something, just a thought I was.
Yeah, let me see if I can find something
That's common sense. It doesn't make sense.
Or do you just
Absolutely.
compromise and put a 7 foot if you're in the buffer, because it's halfway in each one?
Well, are there any things, and I don't know necessarily why there would need to be one other than some aesthetics and even some access issues, but, you know, oftentimes neighbors will put in different fence types, and, you know, they'll offset maybe a foot off the property line each, and they'll have basically different fences to their yards. Is there anything that would regulate that, or should there be anything to regulate that? I mean, like from an aesthetic standpoint, I don't care for it. And it also creates an issue with, you know, maintaining it. Maintaining the fence, but also maintaining the growth that may occur between the two fences. It's hard to get down. And I don't know if there's a way that could or should be thought about.
So one big change in this code versus the other one is we can install fences on the property line, okay? So 15, 20 years ago, a lot of fence codes around everywhere, but even, especially the Ohio area, they had those offsets where there's 1 foot, 2 foot off the property line. And over that time, one of the biggest headaches with municipalities is battling over who maintains that grass, who mows it, who doesn't mow it. They put up 2 privacy fences, now there's a strip of grass, no one's, and then it leads to,
Can't
well,
paint the fence.
or where's my property line? This is my property because my fence is all the way up to here. Most communities have gone away with that. So we are gonna permit fences up to or on the property line. That will eliminate that portion of it. We do have in here about, I like that though, I like, do we have anything here about? What I would like to add in here though, is we'll add about, just building aspect, as far as, I'm trying to think how to word this. It can't be like temporarily put up, it needs to be professionally, or not professionally, but it needs to be, installed. Yeah, properly installed, maintained, and then maybe we could put something in there about, being consistent, if you're putting up a fence, it's all gotta be the same. Yeah.
Is it inspected?
Yeah. Well, we were all getting now, yeah, I mean, previously, never was.
So you're basically talking about a quality standard.
Kinda, yeah, so, yeah, let me look in some verbiage of that, but that's a good one to put in there.
I say, you got the regulation, all fence should be maintained in good condition, be structurally sound and attractively finished at all times.
Okay, yeah, there's a section. Yeah, I think we could add on to that though, a little bit, maybe more specified, consistent materials, color, or something like that.
I think that'd be nice, because you look at the new neighborhoods and like, already, I think like even out in Darby Station, people are putting up fences and you wanna make sure that
Well,
they have,
you have number 6, all fences on a parcel shall have a unified style.
yeah.
So, I mean, you have that,
Yeah, but that's on a parcel.
On a
What if it's an
parcel.
adjoining parcel?
Yeah, right.
That would be different. I mean, if
Yeah.
you wanted,
Chain link up to a wood split rail.
well, I don't know,
Privacy
are
fence.
chain
Let's
links?
see.
Just
are-
Crafting
yeah,
fences.
6 foot plastic, yeah, right.
Are-
but see,
are
that's
chain
tough
link
if you have
fences-
somebody puts, spends $20,000 on,
The 8-foot fence, we know.
the 8-foot composite, carbon fiber fence and that, and, then the other person just wants a wood, it's like, it's like, how do you,
We can't do that.
you can't do that, so that's where, it's like, it'd be nice if everybody's kind of matched similar
If someone's
styles.
permitting, or if someone's submitting a permit for a fence, whatever that fence is, they're submitting.
The whole, yeah, it has to be.
And one of the things I think that we need to reference too, like that, please consult your HOA, because I think that was an issue first when Darby Fields was built and we had residents coming to council saying, well, they're going against what the HOA is saying, but the village approved it. So,
In which is an issue, it is an issue. If someone from Darby Station comes to me with a permit and they propose a fence, if it meets our zoning code, I legally cannot deny it.
oh,
Yeah.
Well, and that's
I
fine,
don't
but
enforce HOA.
but you can also, can we just put the verbiage of,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
check with your
Oh, yeah,
HOA
yeah, yeah.
for approval of some sort?
can
And
they
I would-
sign off on their fence? Can an HOA like, where you would have, I don't know, legally?
I don't want it, I want to put as much of the burden of doing the research on the property owner, if now, let's just say I approve a 6-foot wood privacy fence in a development that the HOA doesn't, that maybe I'm not aware of, it's gonna be on the HOA to,
Enforce it.
yeah, to enforce it. We just, now, we don't have that many HOAs, we don't have that many development yet. They're coming, as we know about them, of course, his first thing that Colin does when he started was what's the HOA, and we've looked at, so we are aware of those things. It's not something that we're gonna just mark off and see you later, we're going to advise them to check with that.
Yeah.
But putting it in here is perfect.
And I say, going back, what we're talking about is, I guess, the verbiage for adjoining, if a fence is, joining an adjacent fence, it should be of similar, design and style. Like
Size.
if
Not
you're,
there,
if
that's
you're,
a can.
Can't say it.
That's up to the HOA. And so if you're in old part of town, there's
Well, so what's the difference of a unified style versus what he is saying? I mean, it
Well,
says all fences on a parcel shall have a unified style. Why can't it say all fences on a parcel or an abutting parcel shall have a unified style? Because you can't force the neighbor to build the same style of fence that he's building. You might, put a $100,000, wrought iron fence in, and I may only have the money to put the chain link fence in, which wouldn't be permitted in our neighborhoods, but the point is there.
I mean, I guess,
So it's
you know,
the
it really,
two sides of chain link fence and one side of
Right.
wrought iron, because it's on the property.
And there's nothing that you can do about that from an aesthetic standpoint, other than you could, I don't even know. I don't know.
I guess we gotta just put some of the stuff just has to go, the onus is, since I would assume most neighborhoods coming in have HOAs, then they'll probably have their own design restrictions, I think just putting some standard, and they, just like we can do it, if we approve a 6-foot fence, then, if an HOA is only 4 foot, that would trump the city code, so.
Correct. I have nothing else on the fencing section.
All right,
You have to get a permit to get a fence.
You have to
You
get
have to get a permit to get a fence.
and then you have to inspect it to make sure that it met whatever the requirement was. And just put a note in there that they better check with the HOA.
Bad dog.
Is that what we're calling it now? He can't smile that big and be called mad dog. Unless he's gonna snarl to go with it.
All right, well, I'll do some tweaks to this, and then, like I said, it's not time pressing, so, if we wanna, is there anything, like I said, the only thing I can think of, unless there's something that you guys think of that we definitely wanna have on December's agenda, the only thing I can think of is, this is going to council, they have a public hearing already scheduled, and they're going through, so if, the only thing I can think of is if they have comments that can change, I guess we'll have to check with Ashley and Paul as how drastically does it change that we would have to bring it back in front of this board for approval. If it's minor things, I imagine we could probably
well,
amend those.
and if it was drastic, then you'd still have to go out to a public hearing, which then you'd have your notice time period for that, right? So,
Well, I guess maybe I don't understand what you're saying, because we haven't had a public hearing to amend this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I mean.
the DRB,
step back.
or the
For the
overlay.
overlay district.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
sorry. That's the only thing I could think of that would be pressing for a December. So like I said, that's planned for one, but there's a chance we probably might not have one. I think as busy as we have been, and definitely, I've already got January, February starting to stack up. Maybe it'd be nice to
Take a break.
have a month off, especially if it's the week of Christmas.
Yeah.
too, so.
I completely agree.
I vote to not have.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay. With
Motion
that,
to adjourn?
Second.
second, third?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brian, thanks for coming out.
Yeah.